Hello guys, so this is David and I'm here from Activate Windows. My company name is Activate Windows. Our tagline is go to settings to activate Windows. This is our logo. You can see our logo watermark here. So now today I'm gonna explain the concept of this what you can call a debite process, more of a process rather than a product. I would say it's not meant to be something of a product, but it's kind of a process that we can follow. So here is an example. So let's say there are four friends, so there is a Moses, Plato, then a Tao, a guy named Tao, and then a guy named Capil. Okay, so there are these four friends. Okay, and they're kind of discussing. So Moses comes up with a statement that pink is a shade of red. Okay, so I'll explain why we are starting with a statement and not with a question. Okay, so a conversation can start with a statement, which can be an opinion or something like a general statement, or it can be a question. But a question is always followed by a statement. So it's kind of an egg and hen problem. So should we start with a question or a statement? But I would say, a question will always follow a statement, but a statement need not always follow a question. So a statement is a more universal thing. So here we are starting with a statement, and which is pink is a shade of red. Okay, so Moses thinks that pink is not a separate color, but it is a shade of red. Okay, now Plato is in a disagreement with Moses. He thinks that no, pink has more tint of blue than red. Okay, that's what Plato thinks. Okay, so he is disagreeing with what Moses is saying. Even Tao is saying that no, pink appears more softer to eyes than red. So pink is pink is color of flowers, red, and red reminds of blood. So according to Tao, the feeling that these two colors induce are very different. Pink reminds of flowers, and red reminds of violence, right? So that's what Tao thinks. Now Capil here is in agreement with Moses, and he says that agree, the wavelength of pink is less than 0.002 nanometers than that of red. Okay, so it is the minimum, and it is less than, it should be the less than, it is less than the minimum difference necessary to be qualified as a different color. For example, what he's saying here is so take it as a species, difference between species and adaptation. So a monkey, you can say, is a different species than a human, right? But you can say a human in India is not a different species than a human in Europe, because the Indians have, let's say, more melanin, and they are adapted to uh, the weather of India. So they are different physically, but they are not so much difference to be called a different species, right? So there has to be a you can say a threshold, maybe, or something, some kind of criteria by which we can distinguish one kind of organisms from another in terms of species. So like that, here what Capil is saying, that pink doesn't meet that criteria to be so different from red. So that's why he's agreeing with Moses. Now what happens is Tao clicks on this statement. Okay, so let's see what happens next. Now there is, so all this is kind of a chat, you can say, and there is a button, click. So there is this, not button, but um, you can say a statement again. Click on an argument to add a counter argument to it. So for example, if I if if I have no problem with this, let's say I am also here, David, there is a guy called David, and I don't have a problem with what Plato is saying, I will not click here. I will click only on the statement. So basically these also now become statements, right? These also become statements because they are also saying something. So I can click on this statement, and then it can fork a new, what we can call a conversation or new debate. For example, now what has happened here? So so Moses, what has happened? Oh, hold a second. Now Moses, so Plato has disagreed with Moses, so Moses has clicked here because they two are in disagreement. So Moses clicks on this statement and adds his counter argument that, dude, pink, what he's saying is pink has what Plato said was pink has more tint of blue than red, but Moses said, dude, I don't see any blue tint, most of the people will not see it, maybe Moses was colorblind, and hence he just couldn't see any more pink, any more bluer than pink bluer than red. Maybe he was colorblind, who knows, right? So was he? Okay, don't know. So okay, so what Plato says, okay, you cool, dude, the RGB coding of the color objectively indicate that red has zero blue component while pink has some, attaching the evidence. Now he has attached a document. Now I have not, like, we don't have that document, you know so um, so I'll show you what it was, right? So let's say this is red, right? So these are RGB. If I hope you know what RGB is. It's red, green, and blue. So I'll make it 255, 0, and 0. So you can see when we have set this red to 255, green to 0, and blue to 0, that means there is no green component or blue component in this color, and it's wholly red. Then we can get a pure red color. But let's see what happens in pink. Okay, this is pink color. It's slightly different than red, right? So you can see there is 134 out of 255 blue in it, right? So this is what Plato shared with Moses. So let's take a screenshot of this, maybe. uh, and then yeah, he circled this kind of thing in red, you know and then he pasted, okay, cancel, he pasted it here. You can see he kind of pasted it, and then he did a kind of a raid 255 00, and then kind of took a screenshot of this, and then encircled this in a raid again. uh, Again, funnily enough, it will not be, oh, okay, cool. It's kind of, it's a limitation in Illustrator, the tool I'm using. So this is what he provided as an evidence that, dude, see, there is zero blue in red, and then you can see there is 134 blue in pink. So you may be colorblind, but this computer here is clearly indicating that it's different, dude. So that's what happened here. And okay, Moses said, okay, dude, the provided evidence shows that one can objectively say that pink is bluer than red. So I agree with Plato's argument. However, Moses is not um, Moses is not satisfied with the original argument that Plato provided, which was, okay, pink has more tint of blue than red, but he's insisting, like, you need to add some kind of proof to this statement itself. So he has requested modification in the statement. This is kind of similar to what happens in amendments uh, in parliaments or kind of things. So pink, so what he has said, you don't just say this, but you add to this like pink has more tint of blue than red because its RGB coding shows more blue component than in red. Okay, there is of course Moses was not very good at grammar, so it has to be in red. Yeah, so all he wrote was 10 commandments, right? Not much writing experience. So pink has more tint of blue than red because its RGB coding shows more blue component than in red. And Plato is okay, yeah, I accept this statement modification. Now these two have reached a consensus. So now they have both kind of issued a joint statement here that Plato and so this is automatically generated if this was an app, So what they say is okay, Plato and Moses have reached consensus on the statement that pink has more whatever that statement again, right? And debate is here closed. Now you can see outside this chat box, so all this happened inside this uh, conversation, a separate conversation. You can see the previous conversation here in gray, and if you click here it will show the whole tree of what happened before, in case if there were multiple sentences, this debate got resolved in just two iterations, we can say. But let's say um, there was a longer conversation and there were statement again, and inside that statement someone clicked on this statement and added a counter argument, and then it happened over 3-4 times, then we could see all those statements here. I'll show an example maybe. I think you got the point. Okay, so that's what happened with this, okay, between Plato and Moses. Similarly, Tao and Moses had disagreements, so they also had a conversation, and Tao told, hey guy, so pink appears more softer to eyes because pink reminds of flower and red reminds of blood. But Moses said, dude, this is kind of anecdotal, one can see that is purely subjective. One can see in red color of flower, maybe because roses are red, you know uh, and then pink is color of intestine of a slain man, right? Insides, I don't know if you have seen insides of, so basically human intestines are pink, so maybe it's vice versa, pink can be a violent color and red can be a pleasant one. So okay, Dow says you're quite right, man. It was subjective. So depending upon one's cultures surrounding and personal experience, each color can mean differently to each individual. So Dow accepts refutation of his argument by Moses. Okay, so what has happened here, if you can say, the argument was refuted, so it is removed here because that disagreement was no more valid, because that statement itself was taken back by the issuer of that statement, right? So you can say this here, it is automatically resolved. Now again, so here, although Kapil had agreed with Moses, there are two guys who are disagreeing with this guy, so they might as well disagree with Kapil. So let's say what has happened here. So Dow has entered the conversation by clicking on this agreement and has issued his own counter argument. What he's saying is there is no universal convention. You are saying that it's 0.002 nanometer and all, but there is no universal convention that sets the minimum threshold. Like, who are you to decide that it has to be like that? Plus, how can you arbitrarily decide that wavelength of red as reference and not as pink's wavelength? I mean, why is it that pink is shade of red? Why is not red as shade of pink, right? I mean, let's say you have a number line, and on the number line you can say, okay, 0, there is 0 and 0.7, and there is 1, and you can say, okay, the integral part of 0.7 is 0 and not 1. Now who are you who are you to decide that um, you know because 0.7 is closer to 1, so why the integral part of it was not 1, you know, something like that. Yeah. Basically, how come the species, I mean, yeah, if we take example of species, so uh, okay, I leave it. Okay, so basically, how can you arbitrarily decide red as the reference point? For example, 0 is reference point for the whole number line. So how can you decide that red is the one, you know? So uh, but basically what Dow is saying, that who are you to decide this kind of convention, that uh, for a color to distinguish itself as a separate color, a hue. Uh, so how, who were you to decide this threshold, right? So Capel said, okay, yeah, I agree that I am not the right person maybe, but there has to be a convention by which we can all decide all this, right? So what he's saying is agree, but then we should have a universal convention to decide a reference color and minimum threshold to categorize different wavelengths into colors. So Dow said, yes, fine, we can do that. He agreed that we should have a SI-like convention to objectively identify range of color and point of reference. But so although they are agreeing, they are not agreeing on the original statement. They are agreeing on a different statement. So Dow requests to modify it. So what he's saying is we need action. We must establish a SI-like convention to objectively identify range of color and point of reference. And Keppel said, okay, that's correct. So here they have agreed with a same statement and they have issued it as jointly. So Kapil and Dow, don't read it Kapil Dev, reach a consensus on need action. We must establish. So need action is a kind of argument, you know, it's not just a statement, it's a request for action. So it appears differently like this: need action. It's not a just agreement or disagreement, it's a need action. We need to do something uh, mm, to establish a better statement. That's what they're saying. The other kind of response here can be need answer, you know. Maybe there is a question, we need to first answer a question before we can issue some kind of statement. For example, I have here one. Okay, I hope I didn't delete it. For example, Voltaire may have asked, you know, pink is shade of to Moses, like how do you define pink and red, right? So this could be need more info activity. So uh, so there can be multiple types of responses. It can be disagreement or agreement or need action or need more info. But here for now, the joint statement they have issued is we should have a SI like convention to objectively identify range of color and need a point of reference. Now you can see here a button called click to enter. So maybe uh, if I read this, you know, pink has more tint of blue than red because RGB coding shows more blue component than in red. I say, okay, I don't disagree, I don't agree with that. So I can click here and reopen this conversation and add my own um, arguments to it. And that's exactly what Capel did here. So what happened here, he clicked on it, so debate was closed. Capel reopened the debate and Capel entered the debate. Okay, earlier there were only 2 people, now there are 3. So what he's saying that, okay, I understand your RGB thing, but although there is slight blueness in pink and red, is it visible to naked eye? Okay, I mean there can be a slight difference, but is it identifiable to humans? If not, then it's not worth naming that color separately, like, right? I mean, what's the difference between crimson and whatever color next to it, right? So how much difference can a computer identify when, and also, yeah, okay, fine, that's how much difference can a computer identify when it calibrates the RGB-ness of a color? Because okay, maybe the computer who is showing this kind of RGB and all thing, maybe it's not enough, because it can only identify 255 levels of redness and blueness. Maybe we need 511 of them, or 1023 of them, right? Who knows, right? So we need to decide how much calibration we need to have, right? So what CAPL is again saying, that we need to have a standardized process to um, differentiate the RGB-ness of a color, and Plato is agreeing with that, and CAPL. So Plato was the joint issuer of this statement. Maybe we should wait for so here we haven't waited for Moses's response, but maybe we should have something like this. I mean, let me just do it right away here. I'll just extend it, and let's drag it down here a bit, and then maybe here. Yeah. So agreement, and here Moses too is agreeing. So here now CAPL is so all are agreeing, but they are not agreeing with the joint statement issued before. That is this one. The joint statement now has to be need action. We must establish a SI-like convention to objectively identify range of color and point of reference, which is the same thing that CAPL and Dow reached in consensus. So now we can say this you can see here, the statement has been modified, and here is the total count of exchanges that happened in between. For example, you can see here it's 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11 actually. Somebody is not good at math. Who was it? The app maybe. Yeah. So also one thing I missed too. So here the CAPL has also shared the debate, the attached link to the debate where they, as Moses and I reached a consensus. It had to be. We need to have a convention to decide these matters objectively, and he has attached the debate where they discussed it. So Moses and Plato can go through all this, and okay, yeah, this makes sense. They may think this and that. Okay, this makes sense, and then they can agree with it, and then yeah, go ahead with it. So finally, what has happened is these two statements have matched. So basically, all the four guys have reached a common statement, as a response to this statement. So okay, congratulations, you have reached a consensus. You all agree with the statement that need action. We should have a SI-like convention to objectively identify range of color and point of reference, after which we can decide whether pink is a shade of red or not. Okay, so it's kind of also an example of agree to disagree, but we cannot just stop at agree to disagree. In a conversation we may not always reach an agreement or disagreement, but we can agree to disagree. In this case, we need to do something. For example, in this case, we need to establish a SI-like system. We need to do something like that to convert that agree to disagree to a consensus, right? So that's also something captured in this example. Okay, now I think this is a long one, so I'll cover this part. The assumptions behind the assumptions taken behind creating this kind of flow chart, the flow of actions or thoughts, you can say. Okay, so I'll cover it in a next in the next video. Okay, so I'm David. I'll meet you next time.